everyone, my name is Fatima and welcome back to the Race Edit, and if you're new here, welcome to the Race Edit and welcome to a new video. And welcome to the discussion of Scuderia Ferrari, because Ferrari, we need to have a conversation. We need to have a chat, and this is a chat that is long overdue. This is a chat that has needed to happen, goodness gracious, maybe even 10 years ago at this point, because honestly, what's going on? What is going on, Ferrari? I have been sitting on this video for a while now. This is something that I've wanted to create, to record for quite a few months now, to be honest, since the early stages of the 2025 Formula One season, because I was like, okay, potentially maybe we might be just jumping the gun with Ferrari, and maybe, you know, they do have something, they did produce something, a car that's, you know, a race winning car, hopefully, maybe. I was like, they're gonna come back from summer break and they're gonna show us that this season wasn't a fluke for them. Like, they're really serious about what they're doing, and I kept pushing it off because I do have faith in Ferrari and I want Ferrari to succeed, but Ferrari is not helping Ferrari. They're not helping me. And so after this past weekend, after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, I had enough. I had enough, because what is going on? Now, do you guys remember, and I'm going to pull up my notes for this one because, like I said, Ferrari, we need to have a chat. Do you guys remember back, man, when we were sold a dream? When we were sold a dream. Do you guys remember back in 2024? Back in that wonderful, that early February morning. I mean, at least early for me because I live in Canada. But that early February morning when the news was announced that Lewis Hamilton was going to be leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. And that it broke the internet. It broke the internet. Because I remember that was probably one of the only days that I had woke up in time to catch breaking Formula One news as it was happening. Like, we saw the rumors, and we saw the rumors, and then the news broke that this was a thing. Lewis Hamilton was going to leave Mercedes and go to Ferrari, and I was just like, I can't go to work today. I went to work, but I was just like, there's just no way. This is unfounded. This is unheard of. This is the biggest Formula One transfer in history. This broke the news. This didn't just break Formula One news, as we know. This broke motorsport news. This broke actual news in general. Like I said before, I had people who don't even watch Formula One texting me, asking me if this was real. And I was like, it broke the internet. It quite literally broke the internet. It was a historic move, as we know, the most successful driver in Formula One history, going to the most successful team in Formula One history. This was a pairing that on paper should be the strongest Formula One team of the new year on paper. And the thing about Ferrari is everyone, Sebastian Vettel, that quote that will never go away, because honestly, he's not wrong. Everyone's a Ferrari fan. Even when you say you're not a Ferrari fan, you are a Ferrari fan. It's true. Everyone knows Ferrari. Everyone low-key supports Ferrari, and even if it's just the culture of Ferrari in Formula One, Formula One and Ferrari are together. That's it. Simple as that. Formula One and Ferrari, they go together like mac and cheese, truly. And when you look at the history of Ferrari being the most successful Formula One team in history, and where they've been since their last WDC in 2007 and their last WCC in 2008, you really just have to question, what happened? What went wrong? How did we get here? Why are we, Ferrari, still struggling? And this is like a decades-long struggle at this point. I mean, we've had teams such as Williams with high highs and low lows. I mean, they're still trying to, in the past, since James Vowles has joined Williams, they have been slowly but surely working their way back up, not even being a bottom feeder team, but to actually being in the midfield, and they're slowly getting back their way into being a contender. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in 2026 with these new regulations. They could get it right. They truly could get it right, and they could be back on top. They just got a podium with Carlos Sainz. You see teams who have struggled, and then you have the likes of McLaren. I mean, they've had high highs, low lows, and now they're back on top again. One of their drivers, if they play it right, should win the WDC this year. Realistically, they should, but I don't know what's going on over the McLaren camp. But what I'm saying is we've seen things like this happen. I mean, McLaren won their last WDC with Lewis Hamilton in 2008, and then they struggled for a really long time. And then in the past 2-3 years, they've really put in the work to be where they are right now, and they deserve that because we've seen McLaren struggle and we've seen them work hard to get to where they are now. With Ferrari, I just feel like I don't know what's going on with them. They're, like I said, their last WDC was 2007 and their last Constructors' Championship was 2008. And we've just been absolutely nowhere with Ferrari even winning. And I'm gonna get into it because I do have it all written down. And my thing is with Ferrari is, while those teams such as Williams and McLaren have gone through the ringer as backmarkers and midfield teams, Ferrari has always managed to stay in the top. From 2007 specifically up until 2025, up until now, or should I say 2024, since that was our last championship, they have pretty much consistently stayed in the top 3 of the WCC, except for 2009 where they finished 4th, 2014 where they finished 4th, and then 2020, a terrible year for them, a terrible year for everyone, when they finished 6th in the standings, and that was their worst campaign in 40 years. And I do have to say, and I am going to talk more about this very shortly, of course I understand the Mercedes dominance. Mercedes dominance was unfounded, unheard of, ridiculous. 10 years of just straight terror from Mercedes. And as a Lewis Hamilton fan, of course I appreciated that. However, Ferrari has always constantly been in that fight with Mercedes. They've always been up there with them, fighting for wins and fighting for the championship title. But for some reason, they just have not been able to do it. And the thing that's so jarring to me is throughout all of this time, up until 2021 when Max and Red Bull won the championship and then we had the Red Bull dominance, I just was like, Ferrari, how did you lose this to Red Bull when you were always up there with Mercedes? And of course Red Bull had Adrian Newey and then Max Verstappen as your driver. Like, come on. Of course I'm not disregarding what they've been able to do, the Red Bull team and the Red Bull campaign, and how they've been able to get success in the past few years, but I'm just like, Ferrari, you've had all this time to figure it out. Finally, when someone is up there with Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, it's not you, it's Red Bull. And don't get me wrong, of course we've had Red Bull's dominance before, Sebastian Vettel back in the 2010s as well, but I'm just like, how did you fumble and then end up having Red Bull take the lead? And the reason I say that is because Ferrari has always been in the top, has pretty much always been in the top 3. And this is no shade to the engineers, but it's because of their drivers. Let's be honest, those drivers are hauling those cars into race wins and podium finishes. Those drivers are working their little bums off to get Ferrari into these positions, and they've low-key been riding off the coattails of their drivers. And the reason I say that is because from 2007 up until now, Ferrari has had some of the best drivers. They've had Kimi Räikkönen, who won the last championship with Ferrari. They've also had his teammate Felipe Massa, who we'll talk about in a minute. And then from there, they've had Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso has 2 championship titles, and more specifically, in the later 2000s, it wasn't like he won those championships 10 years ago at that point. He won his last championship, if I'm correct, in 2006. So what I'm saying is he was still more so than a real hot commodity to have on your team as a driver. And then you have Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel as teammates. And again, Kimi Räikkönen won Ferrari's last championship, and Sebastian Vettel won all 4 of Red Bull's championship wins at that time. And then from Kimi Räikkönen and Vettel, then you have Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc, a new kid, Ferrari, a homegrown Ferrari boy. They really built him up, and he is still with Ferrari now. And then from Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, you have Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Again, another young, promising driver who could help your team win championships. And then from Carlos Sainz Charles Leclerc, you have Charles Leclerc, and now Lewis Hamilton. Guess what? Another championship winning driver. This one, the greatest driver in Formula One history. He has 7 championships under his belt. Records that will be so hard to break. He is Formula One. And for some reason, you have this entire history of great drivers on your team from 2007 to 2024. And what are we doing in 2025? I have said this, and I've said this so many times. When it comes to Ferrari, it is not the drivers. The drivers are putting in the work to bring points home for Ferrari. They are putting in the work. It seems to be with the drivers that they hired, that seems to be the only thing that, in my opinion, they are doing right at this point, because obviously something is not working. Something is just not clicking. They're about to lose P2 in the Constructors' Championship if they're not careful. The drivers can only do so much. I'm not gonna lie. The car right now is abysmal. I still don't understand why they scrapped last year's concept when it comes to this year. We have one more year. We're in the final years of our regulations, and last year they were winning races and that car was fast towards the end of the season, and they were like, nah, nope, we got a better idea for 2025. And the only race we've won, the only race has been a sprint. So do with that what you will. What I'm saying right now is conversations that have been happening with many different people about Ferrari. The issue at Ferrari is in-house. It is deeper than what we see on the outside. And this is not meant to bash the Ferrari engineers in any way, by the way, because the engineers are also working with what they have. And recently, as we've seen, it's been announced that there have been departures in the Ferrari camp. And to that I say the departures are needed, because clearly something is not working, something is not clicking, and maybe they do need to clean it in-house and start fresh. To me, Ferrari lives under the rule of thumb that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it is broke and they do need to fix it, because what they're working with, as I said, is just not working. One thing about Ferrari is they will get rid of team principals, but they'll keep everything else, and I'm like, getting rid of team principals lacks consistency, and I'm gonna get into that in a minute. But I just feel like, I know people were like worried about the departures that are happening in the Ferrari camp, and I'm just, especially when we're moving on to 2026 with the new set of regulations, and I'm just like, sometimes you do just need to start fresh. Sometimes you do just need to start fresh, because especially, it's like when you go into a new year, you get new books, you get new bags, you get new this, you get new that. It starts a clean slate, and you can get into that new year with a fresh set of eyes, a fresh mind, and you start off strong. And sometimes that is exactly what is needed to be able to succeed. I never liked going into a new school year with an old notebook, because it has notes from my previous year that I'm done with, you know? I don't know if that analogy works, but hey, it's what I got. Now, as we know, Ferrari is Italian through and through. They bleed red. You look at Ferrari, you hear the name Ferrari, and you know that they are Italian. That is never ever going to change. That will, especially in Formula One, that is never ever going to change. It's just like how when I look at Mercedes, I know they're a German team, you know? When I look at Alpine, I know they're a French team. When I look at McLaren, guess what? I know they're a British team. That's not going to change. I know my history. People know their history when it comes to this. And because Ferrari is so ingrained in Formula One, you'll never forget that they're an Italian team. Simple as that. However, because Ferrari bleeds the Italian flag, they bleed green, white, and red, they have the need to keep everything Italian. And that's completely commendable. I respect that truly. I get that. But on the flip side, I do have to say, with wanting to keep things together, with wanting to keep things in-house, it doesn't translate. In the modern age that we're in this 2025, that actually does not translate. And this is where diversity comes into play. And when I talk about diversity, I mean in the sense of, yes, hire Italian engineers. Ferrari hires a lot of engineers from their in-house engineering program, but you know, sometimes people, when I don't know the ins and outs of how much that costs and what it is to get into that program and what work entails to get into that program, but I do have to say sometimes it's cool to look outside of that. I know there's so many talented engineers in Italy that aren't in Ferrari's in-house engineering program as well. Look outside there. And also, maybe you don't have to hire just Italian, which of course they've had people move from other teams into their camp as well. And I don't want to sound like problematic and like, oh, Ferrari should like go about the Italians, because I don't agree with that. I do love the sentiment that they are working to keep their camp as Italian as they can, but I also do think it's hurting them a little bit too. Because what's important about diversity is it allows us to succeed. It brings in different works of life. It brings in different outlooks. People who are underrepresented but also have so much talent that we might not see if it wasn't for diversity. I mean, when you look at Lewis Hamilton, even Ayrton Senna, for example, they come from lower working class backgrounds into the sport that is a very wealthy sport. And they came into the sport and they made history. They made history. Think of all the wonderful, young, talented drivers that there are in this world that might never be able to get a chance, that we don't even know what we're missing out on, truly, in Formula One. We only have 10 teams on the grid. It'll be an 11th team next year. That's only 22 drivers out of the vast majority of talented drivers that we've seen come and go in Formula One, that we've seen come and go in motorsport, that might just never get the chance. And then there's so much people coming up that might not even be able to continue into Formula One because they just can't afford how expensive it is. They might not be able to get the sponsors or the funding in time, etc. I don't believe that Ferrari should just drop their entire we only hire Italians, we only hire Italian engineers, but they do just need to have the foresight that maybe only hiring Italian engineers and not looking outside of the box is what's hurting them. And they have a prime example with that with Jean Todt, their former team principal during the Michael Schumacher years, a Frenchman who really changed the game with Schumacher as to what Ferrari is as a team. And this now then goes back into my talking point about team principals, because we've seen team principals come and go in Ferrari, and I do think Fred has what it takes right now to bring the team to where it needs to go and where it needs to be. I don't think, I've heard people say, I've heard very slight conversation about Fred leaving. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think that needs to be what happens. Like I said, consistency is key. Do I believe they need to clean in-house? Yes. Do I think getting rid of your team principal right now at this moment is the right choice to do? Absolutely not, because that is the one thing that right now for Ferrari and with the drivers that they have is what needs to be consistent, I think. And then with the team principal is bringing engineers and people onto the team who can produce race-winning cars. Again, we know the drivers are comfortable with Fred. He has history with both of those two drivers, and that is one of the reasons, as we know, that why Lewis Hamilton signed on was because of Fred. So I think at this current moment, getting rid of Fred would be the wrong thing to do. I do think that, especially when we're going into new regulations in 2026. But definitely when it comes to race engineers, strategists, I'm not even going to talk about Ferrari's abysmal strategy that we've seen in previous years. In this year, I don't know what, that's what they're known for, is for making terrible strategic calls. And it's like, why wouldn't we work on that? What's going on that's preventing us that? And I understand with Ferrari that there's a lot of politics within that team, within the entire Ferrari brigade, just because of their history in Formula One. But I think, and that's what, and I'm going off script, but that's what makes me question things. I'm just like, winning for some reason is not their priority. It feels like they care about whatever internal personal needs that they have and making sure that's what gets passed, and not Ferrari winning another championship, another constructors championship as well. And it just blows my mind, because wouldn't that solve all your problems? Wouldn't that solve majority of your problems? But again, there is so much internal politics within that team, and I only know the tip of the iceberg. I only know very, very little, but it's ridiculous. I do have to say though, it's so insane to me how at the start of this year, we had such high hopes. Ferrari cannot bring in a driver like Lewis Hamilton. They cannot bring in a driver like Lewis Hamilton and have him drive the car that they have him driving. And have him struggling and have him begging to hear back from his race engineer. And I don't want to dogpile on Ricky. I don't, because everyone is, but it comes to a point. It actually comes to a point where it's like, why is a 7-time world champion begging to get feedback from his race engineer during a race? Why is this consistently happening as well? And don't get me wrong, this is not me saying that Lewis Hamilton has been perfect this season. We know he's been struggling this season. That's not new news, and that is something that I've said multiple times. I've talked about this in previous videos. Of course Leclerc is going to do well. Of course Leclerc is going to beat his teammate at this current moment because he's been in that Ferrari car since forever. Pretty much. He's been in that Ferrari car for goodness knows how long. He's been in Ferrari, ingrained in Ferrari since the start of his career. Of course he's going to do well. Of course he's going to beat his teammate in the first year. Again, we've talked about Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari, and I think what a lot of people are now realizing is, yeah, it's great to have a 7-time world champion on your team and root for them. However, like Leclerc, if Leclerc was to leave Ferrari right now and go to McLaren or Mercedes, he would also struggle, because when he started off in Formula 1, he was an Alfa Romeo Ferrari engine, and then he moved to Ferrari engine. He too would struggle with her Mercedes engine, vice versa. The reason you see drivers such as Alonso, Sainz, Hülkenberg be able to adapt quickly is because they moved teams a lot in their career. So they're able to do that, I guess, switch really easily, whilst Lewis Hamilton, from the very beginning of his Formula 1 career, mind you, which was in 2007 and we are now in 2025, has been a Mercedes engine. Let that sink in. And it's commendable to those other drivers who are able to switch when it comes to different teams and different engines. However, they also weren't with the same engine for almost 20 years. So I think that, yeah, definitely he's struggling and things could be better, but I also understand, and I think the camp at Ferrari now also understands the battle that they had coming in. And like, mind you, he's been doing pretty all right. He's right up there with his teammate, by the way. He did win the sprint in China, by the way. Like, he's been doing pretty all right. It's not like he's failing. It's because he's Lewis Hamilton that everyone's like, oh my god, he's doing terrible. He's having a terrible time. He's not failing, that's for dang sure. He's not. But I go back to all of that to say, you simply cannot have a 7-time world champion on your team and just not listen to them. You simply cannot, because that is one of the reasons why you hired him. It is absolutely ridiculous at this point to just not even have a race-winning car. When Lewis Hamilton signed with Ferrari, I was like, I said in one of my videos, I said that Ferrari has no reason to not succeed. You have Leclerc and Hamilton, who are two amazing drivers, and all you need to do is just provide a race-winning car, and you can't even do that. It boggles my mind, and it just shocks me. It just shocks me, and I cannot believe that we're even in this position. Of course, longtime Ferrari fans are like, girl, this is nothing new, but I'm just like, if you're going to bring in 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton, and you cannot provide a race-winning car, then what was the point, truly? Like, what was the point? You brought him in so you guys could win another championship. Were you just relying on the fact that he's a 7-time world champion, that because of that, he's just magically going to bring your tractor of a car to #1 every single race? Because it feels like that to me somehow. I don't know. And it's like, we see him putting in the work, and I'm not going to compare him to Schumacher. I'm not, because definitely different times, different eras of Formula 1 where they have pretty much unlimited access to the garage. But I do believe that with new regulations coming in next year, Ferrari, this is kind of like make or break, to me at least, not as a Ferrari fan, but like as in just like, they're never going to succeed at this point if they aren't able to get it right next year, because I do believe that they are working towards building a better future for Ferrari in Formula 1, and they are, and I do think that there will come a point where they're like, maybe we should listen to our drivers, not just because Lewis Hamilton's a 7-time world champion, but because also Charles has been with Ferrari I don't even know actually how long Charles has been with Ferrari for, but Charles has been with Ferrari for a good amount of time, and they have their input. While they're not engineers, their input also matters, and they know what that car feels like when they're driving it. So maybe let's just have a listen. Maybe let's just have a listen. Do they even care? Is it just complacency? Are they just stagnant in their ways? They know that they're always going to be loved because they are Ferrari. They know the stock that they have. They know the fans that they have. Ferrari is a religion. It is. It truly is. And they know that they're always going to have that core base beneath them. No matter what, Ferrari will always be Ferrari. But I did just have to say, how shameful is it that this is the best you have for the people who invest their daily lives into you, and you cannot be bothered to do better because you know that they'll always be there for you? How shameful is that, Ferrari? I want them to succeed. I really want them to succeed so bad because they're the team. They're the team. You say draw a car, kids are most likely going to draw a red car. Like, Ferrari is that team. And even if drivers say that they wouldn't go to Ferrari, that's a lie. Because if Ferrari is able to produce a championship winning car, guess who's going to that team? And I do think that I went on this entire rant to say that I do believe that Ferrari is going to succeed. I actually have hopes for them, high hopes for them for the 2026 season. I do believe that by the end of this year, they will have at least 1 or 2 race wins under their belts. I do believe that. I actually have so much faith in Ferrari. And maybe I'm just like everyone else where it's like you're believing in the unbelievable, but I truly think that they're going to get it right. I think that the rumors are simply rumors right now. And again, not to go back to Lewis Hamilton, but there's a reason why he joined that team. I don't think Lewis Hamilton, he's a sentimental man for sure, and of course thinks that Mercedes went weird, but he's not a dumb man. He's not dumb. He knows the moves that he's making and all the things that we've seen him do in his career, in Formula One and in business. They have been smart moves. He knows what he's doing, and I didn't go into 2025 saying that Lewis Hamilton was going to win the championship with Ferrari. That was never on my radar. I was like, these new regs, 2026, 2027, that's when things are going to change for them. That has always been the mindset that I have lived by when it comes to his move to Ferrari. But I'm just so disappointed in how bad they've been this specific year. However, to counter that, because they've been so abysmal this year, I'm like, it literally can't get worse. Not touch black, knock on wood. But literally, I was saying to myself, I talked to myself. I was saying to myself earlier today, I was like, Lewis Hamilton has gone through every single like technical bad thing that could happen to a driver in their Formula One career has pretty much happened to Lewis Hamilton this year, in this one singular year in his Ferrari career. And I'm just like, sure, rack up all that bad juju, because come next year, I'm so serious, it's not happening. I cannot fathom a world where in 2026 Ferrari is still struggling, because it would just be absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. And at that point, girl, what are we even doing racing in Formula One? Like, what are we doing here? But like I said, I do have the faith in them. I just believe that they need to change something. Something needs to be changed, and it has to happen expeditiously, because you cannot go into the next 10 years still failing, still struggling. And for what? You're just wasting money at that point. That's it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Ferrari. I mean, there's a lot more I can say about Ferrari, but that's really what I had to like just let out, because I cannot believe that this is life. But thank you all so much for sitting here and watching this video. If you're listening to the audio version, thank you for listening, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much and have a wonderful, wonderful day.